All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Here in this episode, we're going to talk about a question that I'm getting more and more. Gone are the days. I'm not saying they're completely behind us, but for the most part, gone are the days of offers being submitted to buy houses with $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 over asking price, no contingency, strictly cash. Right? I'm not saying those don't exist, but they are much more farther and fewer between than they were, let's say, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, or maybe even a year ago, where I was running into those options too. Now I'm having the question asked, how do I sell my house and buy a house at the same time, right? I don't want to be homeless, but I don't want to have two mortgages. So what are the steps I need to go through to ensure that I can get my house sold and I can move into my new home, whatever that is going to be, where there's as little as much transition as possible in terms of temporary housing or something in the middle. Ideally, most clients are asking me, how do I sell my house and move right into my new house on the same day? So if this is a boat that you guys are in, if you're thinking about doing these things, if you're looking to move, but you want to buy something else and you don't want to have a huge transition period, you don't got a ton of money, but you need to use the proceeds from your existing house to buy another house, then this episode is probably going to be for you. So I would sit back, relax, and we're going to chat about it right now. All right, guys, welcome to the channel here at Live Life in Maine. My name is Scott Tebow. I'm a broker with eXp Realty. I'm also a realtor and a consultant and advisor, a broker as well. I think I've already said that. I work outside of real estate. I work on deals with land. I work on commercial deals in terms of consulting. And then pretty much I help buyers and sellers in the residential market as a broker, buy and sell real estate. So I've been doing this since 2013, if you don't know me. And if you're the first time to this channel, then I'd encourage you to subscribe if the content I'm going to provide here is valuable to you, or you can look at some of my other channels. I always open up this video by saying, more importantly than all that, I'm married. I'm a family man. I have 5 children, 3 grandchildren. I'm a son of Maine, and I'm a patriot. I served this country from 1986 to 1994 in the U.S. Navy. And I say that more importantly today than any day, because right now is election day, and we're going to see what happens in the next couple of days. But I'm coming to you on November 5th. So hopefully I'll get this out in a couple of days, and maybe we'll know by then. All right. I'm not going to kind of digress. I'm kind of going to get right into it. Again, I wanted to create this video because I'm going to tell you what this video is not going to be about first. It's going to be pretty quick, and then I want to get into the details of what I think this video needs to be about, or will be about, and what you're really asking. So this video is not going to cover if you have a house and you're looking to buy another house and you're going to sell your house first and you got a transition period where you have a place to go. Maybe it's temporary housing, maybe it's a winter rental, maybe it's your family, someplace to go until you find another house. This is not the video that's going to be interesting to you. This also video is not going to be interesting to you if you have a house and you have equity in it, or a lot of equity, and you can take out a home equity line of credit, and you can use that home equity line of credit to buy another house, get the process going, the down payments, you've been through lending, your debt to income ratio is good. You can carry 2 mortgages for a little bit until you sell your primary first time residence before you move into the second one. You can do that again without this video, and you can do it in general. I'm just giving you an idea of you can do this, and it's not going to require what's going to happen in this video when I'm going to talk about it. So I'm going to take those two conditions off the table, and I'm going to specifically talk about, you got a house and you need to sell this house to buy this house, because you need the proceeds of this house to pay for the proceeds of this house. And the time between this house and this house, you want to be able to go right from here to here. You don't want anything in the middle, or you want it very small because you don't want a lot of disruption to your family. So first of all, I'm going to talk to you about the process, and we're going to talk first on the seller side. You're the seller right now, right? You have a house, you have an asset there you're looking to sell, and you're looking to use the proceeds to buy another house. And we're going to work under the operation and under the auspice that this house that you own, you have some equity in it. You're not upside down. In other words, you're not going to sell it for less than you owe. We're going to assume that you're going to sell it and you're going to make some money, if nothing more than break even. But in most cases, I'm going to say you're going to sell it and have some money. That money is going to help cover the down payment and closing costs for this new house you're going to. So under those pretenses, I'm going to first talk to you as a seller, like I just said. So the first thing you need to do before you even start looking at other houses, you got to put your house on the market. Well, what do you do to do that? First thing I would recommend, and I'm not just saying this because I'm in the industry, this is going to be a delicate situation. You're definitely going to want to hire a professional. You're definitely going to want to hire, in my opinion, realtor. Somebody who's done this before, not somebody who does this part-time, somebody who's done this before, can demonstrate that they've done this before, because you got a lot of dominoes that are all going to come down at the same time. So you're going to want to hire a professional. And when you hire that professional, when I say hire, you're going to want to sign a contract, a listing agreement with a realtor that's going to help you navigate this process to get your home sold. They may actually help you buy another home too, but let's just start with part A first. You're going to have to come together on price, whatever that price is. Maybe you think your house is worth more than the market says it is. Maybe you don't know how much your house is worth. Maybe it's worth less. Maybe you think it's worth less than that market says it is. A good realtor is going to understand how to price your house. They're going to understand the neighborhood, the demographics, the area, the gotchas, and what is sold around you that's like you, and be able to come up with a pretty good market analysis, a property analysis, a competitive market analysis is what we call it, on what your house will probably most likely sell for. That's the first question. The second thing we're going to do, me or whoever you hire, if you're going through this process as a realtor, we're going to want to know what you're hoping to get, right? What your net proceeds, what you're hoping to get in terms of how much money you need, right? And we're going to have to understand what you owe in the house, if you have any debts, anything like that. It's all about net proceeds. It's not how much you can sell it for. It's how much you're going to be able to keep or use to buy to your next property. And the third thing we're going to know is we're going to go through a property disclosure, and we want you to identify all the material challenges that may be wrong with your house. That's number 3, right? Now, I'm going to take that one step further, and this is what I do with my clients. There may be material challenges that you're not even aware of. And I always recommend, before you put your house on the market, if you're in this situation, before you put your house on the market, you have a building inspection done or home inspection done. If you don't know how to do that, or if you don't know who to talk to, again, a good realtor is going to be able to help you with that, because he or she would have had to have had a lot of experience, as do I, with different building inspection companies, different home inspection companies, on who to call to get this process started, right? You're going to want that report. Now, I've heard this question asked me both ways. Why, as a realtor, Scott, or why, as a seller, would they want to know the defects of their house that they may not even be aware of, because once they know it, they have to disclose it? And my answer is always, in most cases, that is the case. You want the buyer to find out those discrepancies, however, or those deficiencies or those challenges. However, in this case, you don't want to accept an offer, allow the buyer to go through a due diligence period. The buyer's going to come back with all these challenges that they found, and you didn't know anything about it. That could take the deal right away. So you're going to want to know that up front. And I'm not even saying, guys, that you have to fix those issues. Some of them may be small. There may be none. Some of them may be big. But you're going to want to know what they are, because two things can happen. You're going to want to know what they are because you may be able to fix them. They may be small. Or you're going to want to know what they are because they may be big, and you want to let the buyer know, whoever's going to give you offers on your property, these are some of the challenges, and the house is being sold appropriately based upon some of these challenges if you're not going to fix them. I think that's important because, like I just said, you don't want to put an offer on a house but to go buy a house, and the offer you got on your house fell through because the due diligence period came up with something that you were totally not aware of, and now you have to fix or at least disclose it, which is maybe causing the price of the house to go down. You may have to give some buyer concessions to fix the remedy of that situation, you're going to want to know this up front. And the best way I can describe this to you is storytelling. I'm going to tell you this just happened to me, right? And it's not the first time and it won't be the last. I was representing a buyer in this situation. They were going to buy a house. Everything was going good until we got to the leach field and the septic system. So we were doing a leach field inspection and we turned the water and we started running the water for about 15, 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden the water stopped. And we're like, what's going on here? I think what's going on? Is it clogged or whatever? Long story short, discovered that the well had run dry. All right. Now the seller had no idea that they had low water in their well. They didn't test it. They didn't do anything. They've been using it showers, but apparently not longer than 20 or 25 minutes because they never had this issue. Or so they say. I believe them. I'm not saying they did know. So what had to happen? Well, obviously my buyer is not going to buy the property without well water. So it went back and forth. Long story short, went back and forth. The seller was like, why don't you just wait leave the well alone and let the water build back up? I'm like, no, that's unsatisfactory. We only ran it for 20 minutes. What happens if the buyer wants to take a long shower, wash a car? Well, no, this is unsatisfactory. So I convinced the seller's broker that the well needed to be tested. And sure enough, they hired somebody to test the well and determined that there was less than a half a gallon a minute of flow or recovery, and that the well needed to be either fracked or re-drilled. Thankfully, the well only needed to be fracked. The vein had dried up, so they went down to the well, they fracked it, opened it up more, and more water came in. But that actually presented another problem. And that other problem was, I got more water, get to 5 to 7 gallons per minute, and it was flowing great, and they couldn't run the well dry. But then my buyer, via my recommendations, want to have a water test, right? You want to make sure you know what you're drinking, especially if you're on private water, a well, i.e. And the water test did not come back favorable per EPA standards. This is no fault of the seller. The seller didn't know the water was that the well was very low, that it was only recovering at less than a half a gallon a minute, and didn't know after she had it fracked that there would be a problem with the well, with the water. But all that came up. We got it all resolved. Thankfully, we got our buyer through the closing time, and the closing still happened on time. I built in enough leeway to come up with these things. It was a scramble at the last second, but we got through it. All I'm trying to tell you guys, if you don't have experienced realtors working on both sides of the equation, and I will shout out the other realtor was really good. We worked great on this. She was very informative. She knew what she was doing. She was very communicative with me and with her client, the seller, and we got through the process. But as a seller trying to buy a new home, you don't want to go through that. It's only going to cause you heartburn, headache, and anxiety. You want the transition to be as smooth as possible. So when I get asked that question, that's why I say you want to have a building inspection or home inspection done, just so you know what could be potentially caught if they do their home inspection. Because a good buyer is not going to use your home inspection. They're going to want to go out and get their own. Why wouldn't they, right? They're going to want to do their own due diligence. They're going to want to pay their own inspection company to do their own due diligence, because that inspection company is now representing them, not you as a seller. I also say, if you're in that situation and you're working with me and I'm going to help you sell a house and I'm going to help you buy the next house, I will pay for that. Sometimes it's $2,000, sometimes it's $1,500, depends on the size of your house. I will pay for that inspection, right? I will pay for it, assuming that I'm going to sell your house, help you sell it, and help you buy it. And I'm going to make commissions on both. And if that's the case, I'll eat that cost. If it turns out that you're not going to sell your house or you're not going to buy another house, then I'm going to ask for that money to be reimbursed to me, because, I'm not in business of giving away money for free. But just to give you an idea, you need to have an inspection on your house so you know what the potential gotchas are going to be. And again, you don't need to fix them if they're big. Maybe you want to fix them, but you don't need to. You just need to disclose them so the buyers that are coming in to look at your property, their representation, their brokers, or even them, know what's coming up and know that the house is positioned with that price to take into account those challenges, right? So there's no surprises when you get an offer and the offer says, I'm accepting this I want to continue with the offer, but I want a $20,000 concession because I found this. You already disclosed it. They already know. You don't even accept the offer. If I'm your broker, I don't even accept the offer, right? I don't. So that's why you want to build an inspection or a home inspection. You don't want any gotchas. You don't want when they come back during the contingency period to discover anything that you didn't already know and you didn't allocate for either in disclosure and say the house is being as is, or maybe you take this building inspection, this home inspection, and you fix those things and you leave that right on the counter saying, I had my own home inspection done. It was done 2 months ago. Here's the challenges that came up with the house and here's everything that was resolved. Here's everything that I did to fix these. Here's the contractors. Here's the price. Here's the invoices. Here's everything I did to resolve these issues just to make you buyer feel comfortable that you're buying a good home. That is one of the first, second, and third, and now fourth steps I recommend when you're trying to sell a house and you're going to buy another house. All right. So you get through that process. You get through the pricing. You get through the inspection. You get through the property disclosure, which you may or may not know of in front of you. You get through all that stuff, and now it's time to start looking for a new home. And here's why you want to wait until you get to that process. Because when you are going to start looking at new homes, you're going to have to state in the purchase and sale agreement that your offer is subject to selling your home. It's written in 2 areas of the purchase and sale agreement. It's written even if you're a cash buyer, or it's written if you're going to finance. And you may be a cash buyer, you may be able to sell this house, and you owe nothing, you can take all the money, you're going to put it into your next house. But even or you have to let the next seller know that this offer is subject to sale. And that's going to create an addenda. And that addenda is going to ask you how long is it going to take you to sell your house. And there's going to be a time frame. If the seller of the house you're trying to buy is willing to take the house off the market and accept your offer, there's going to be a time frame that you're going to have to report to as the seller of your house, and the listing broker as a seller of the house is going to have to report to the broker of the buying house, the house you're going to buy, a time frame to make sure things line up and that it's under contract and everything's proceeding smoothly. Guys, I could spend 3 hours on just that alone, and I'm just highlighting what the things you're going to need to do to make sure that's the case, right? Because that addenda is very important. And here's another example, right? I had a buyer who was a seller. Actually, let's back it up. I had this exact scenario. I had a seller that was selling their home and was going to buy another house. Now, thankfully, that house was vacant. It was a flip property, had been renovated, it was in great shape. But in order for them to sell their house, in order for them to buy this house, they had to sell their house. Back it up one level deeper, the couple of the offer they accepted to buy their house was also in the same situation. They had to sell their house first to buy my client's house in order for my clients to buy this house that had been flipped and renovated. So talk about dominoes. That was 2 dominoes. I did hear even further up the line that there was somebody trying to buy my buyer's offer's house and had the same scenario, but that was 2 degrees. That all worked out. So I don't know if that's true or not. But the point I'm trying to make is it's very important you understand this when you are putting your house on the market, and then you understand it when you're going to make an offer, because that that seller who's allowing you to buy their house, they're going to want to know that too, right? And you have to disclose it that your house is subject to sale. And again, this wasn't happening this much a couple of years ago because nobody was accepting subject to sales. The market was so hot, people were giving, a lot of money over asking price, no contingencies, or they had enough money to float 2 notes or whatever the case was, but it wasn't happening. That is now happening now because the housing market has gotten so expensive, if you will. So back to your original house. You're going to sell your house now, and you've gone through this contract. This inspection, and now all the issues that are wrong with your house. And maybe you fix some of them, maybe you don't. But regardless, your realtor and you are going to disclose, here's the challenges, and hopefully you fixed them. Maybe you didn't, but you're going to disclose that. So the buyer knows what they're buying. The buyer is still going to probably most likely do their own due diligence just to confirm what they found and what you found, right? The next thing you got to consider, and this is again where a good realtor is going to come into play. It's one thing to get an offer on your property or on the house that you're going to sell. It's quite another thing to accept it based upon the terms and conditions, the funding, how it's being financed, the time frame, the contingency period. It's very different. So guys, all I'm trying to say to you is your realtor needs to understand if you have multiple offers, maybe you price this house to sell fast, right? And you have multiple offers, and one offer is more than you're asking for, one offer is less than you're asking for, and one offer is exactly what you're asking for. You got to read the fine print. You got to say, oh, this house, they're offering more. Well, what's the risk to you if you accept this offer? Do they have a longer contingency period? Are they looking to close longer or quicker? Right? That's also a challenge. What if they're looking to close in 2 weeks and you can't close in 2 weeks because you don't want to be homeless, right? Remember, as a seller, you are in control. You don't have to accept any offer. Just because they match your price doesn't mean you have to accept it, right? You can put in your own due diligence, or you can put in your own time period. I'm willing to accept an offer that meets my price and can close, but if it closes before I can buy my next house, maybe I want to rent back to your new buyer, the person that now owns your house, so you don't have to move. Maybe that's a possibility that can happen in order for you to get to your new house without a massive transition of moving 3 times, as an example. Moving out into a temporary place, moving out of that temporary place into a new place, right? Hopefully that might be a possibility. Or maybe the person, the couple, the family, or the individual that's buying your house is flexible and say, I don't have to move in for a couple months, whatever it is, right? We'll close here. You've gone through all the due diligence and everything's ready to go. There's no reason the buyer will walk away without forfeiting their earnest money, because because they've gone through the whole process and everything's checked. Which it just reminded me to think of another thing. When you're accepting offers, make sure they got enough skin in the game, right? I'm going to just give an example. You have an offer, let's say it's $10,000 over asking price. And you have an offer right at asking price, and you have an offer that's a little bit below asking price. All the offers want a contingency period to do their own due diligence, right? But offer A, the one that's $10,000 over asking price, is only willing to put down $2,000 in earnest money. The current offer that the one that's asking, is willing to put down $5,000 in earnest money. And the one that's a little less is willing to put down $10,000 in earnest money. Now, obviously, which offer are you going to take? That may be a question for you. I'm going to pause and ask you, which offer would you take? Everything's the same. One's offering $10,000 more. One's offering the same. One is offering less. The one that's offering $10,000 more is $2,000 in earnest money, down payment, if you will, that they lose if they don't follow through. No fault of you. One is matching your price, but they're only putting down $5,000, and the other one's a little bit low, but they're putting down $10,000. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into that in terms of what the offer looks like and how quick it can close and what type of funding it is and what type of financing it is. If you have safety issues, maybe government loans won't work, like FHA, VA, rural housing development, USDA. Maybe that won't work because you get some safety issues that you can't resolve that's going to flag in the loan. But regardless, your realtor should know this stuff. Which offer are you going to accept? If you're asking me, it depends. I'm always going to say that it depends, right? I obviously like whoever's putting an offer on my client's house to have as much skin in the game as possible, because if they walk away from the deal, and it's not my seller's fault, like they've gone through the due diligence period, they disclosed all these things, or they lost their funding or whatever, and it wasn't no fault of them, they get that money. So I want to have the seller that's buying your house, let me back up, the buyer who's buying your house that you're willing to sell, have as much skin in the game as possible. So obviously the higher the earnest money, the better, because the chances of them walking away are less. But that's one thing you got to take into account. Your realtor is also going to take into account, like I just said, what type of loan is it and how quick can they close, or how delayed can they close. Maybe you don't want it to close for 6-8 weeks, right? Because you need time to buy this other house. Maybe you want it to close quicker and you can rent back from them. But regardless, you don't want to be stuck in that transition period where you got to pack everything 3 times and you got to move to some area. Now, sure, if it's just you, maybe it's not a problem. If it's just you and your spouse or your significant other, maybe it's not a problem. But if it's you and a family, you got 2, 3, 4 kids, you got a spouse, you got to undo, that can be nerve-wracking. And I haven't personally been in those shoes, but I've been with clients and it can be nerve-wracking, right? They're not sure where they're going to live next week. They're trying to work things out. They're scrambling. They're panicking. The kids can feel. The kids may have to be going to a new school system if you're moving to a different school system, but you can't register your kids in that school system yet because you don't have a house in that area. I mean, there's a whole lot of things you got to think about. That as an experienced realtor, we're not just about selling houses, guys. We know all this stuff because we've been through this before or helping clients buy houses. So there's a lot of things you have to take into account. That's on the sell side, right? You put an offer in. Now let's jump ahead. You put an offer in, right? Well, what's going to compel that seller from accepting your offer based upon they know that you have to sell your house first in order to buy their house. Specifically if you're in a competing offer situation. Think about it. You're in that boat too as a seller. What's going to make you accept an offer from somebody if they have a house that's subject to sale, right? So the sweeter the deal from the buyer that's buying your house is going to make it the sweeter the deal that you're going to offer as the buyer buying the next house. You got to take those things into account, right? So what's going to cause that? What's going to make that seller say, I'm willing to roll the dice. I'm going to take this property off the market and I'm willing to allow you to have a subject to sale with an addenda that says this house is going to go under contract and we'll keep proceeding forward within 10 days, 2 weeks, 5 days, whatever it is that's decided in the negotiations between the realtor, if there is one, of the house that you want to buy and your realtor, the one that's representing you, right? Whatever that is, they need to negotiate that. Now, I've done this many times, very successful with it. It can be nerve-wracking because you got to get everybody on the same page. And I cannot disclose more importantly than this. Transparency and over-communication is the key in this situation. Without those two things happening, the chances of things going amiss are going to be higher than they should be. You really want to work with somebody who over communicates and is very informative. Generally, you'll be able to decipher that. First of all, if you already have a realtor that you know, like, and trust, you're already going to know their personality. But if you don't, then you're going to maybe want to interview some realtors before you sell your house, because more than likely you're going to want to use that realtor to not only sell your house but help you buy the other house, right? And that realtor is going to want to do that. I would want to do that, right? Because I know the situation, right? So you're going to want to know, and you're going to want to interview them if you don't know a realtor that's done this before, because communication and transparency is the key, and you're going to ask them those questions. And I'm gonna even throw this out one further. And if you're interested in this, guys, you can send me a text or an email or give me a call and ask me what are some questions you should be asking realtors when you're interviewing them to help you sell their house or to help you buy a house, right? Not just take it, off Zillow or whatever. What are some of those questions you might want to know that you don't even know right now? It's impossible to know what you do not know. But some of the things you might want to think about that other people can tell you, hey, you should be asking them this. You should be thinking about this. You should be thinking about this. And they should be able to answer those questions. If they can't, or if they have they look like a deer in the headlights, it should be a flag, right? You gotta have knowledge. And the only way to have knowledge is experience. You can read about it in book stuff, but you gotta have knowledge through experience. And they should be able to rattle off, this is how they handled them in the past. And this is some of the stories. This is some of the things they've dealt with. I try to do that a lot in this channel. I try to give you stories of past experience that I've had with both sellers and buyers, just to help you become more educated. So when you get to that process, you may know more than the average bear, right? So let's move on. You're now trying to buy this house and you're trying to sell this house, right? Let's just say, for the sake of this video, so it's not 3 hours long. Everything's moving fine here, and everything's moving fine here. Now, obviously, if it's in the same area, right, maybe you can work with the same title company. And why is that important? I had it happen a year ago where my client who was selling their house and buying a new house, their client was dependent upon their house being sold so they could buy the house they wanted to buy. So it was a domino effect, but instead of upstream, it was downstream. We got to use the same title company because the seller of the house that my client was going to buy needed to close first. So they had the funds to buy the house they wanted to buy. And the seller in my buy, I'm confused, my client who was selling their house in order to buy the house that they wanted to buy, closed afterwards. And that was only because this seller needed to close first on that loan. However, it looked like it was a same day transaction, right? It was a little risky on the buyer, on the seller. I'm getting confused myself, on the seller of the clients of my buyer's client, right? Let me say that it was a little risky for the house my client was going to buy, their seller, because they were actually closing first. And if for whatever reason, buyer fell through, she couldn't sell the house or something happened the last second, they were stuck. But in this example, it was with the same title company. So it was the same day closing. Everything worked out fine, but it was the same day closing, allowing the funds didn't have to go anywhere. They just stayed with it right in the title company. The title company didn't even really write a check unless there was something left over. They just put that money, they banked it here under this shell, and they moved it to this shell, and there was another closing in the afternoon, and proceeds were paid out then, and they got to buy their house. I've seen it the other way too, where as your client may need to close first before the seller of the property that they're buying, they allow them to close on the house that they're buying. So you can have it both ways. But all I'm trying to say, guys, is you got to have the same title company. And in Maine, we're a title or attorney state. Everything's done through title, attorney, or title company. It's ideal if you can have the same title company to do this. Now, maybe you can't. Maybe you're selling your house in Maine and you're buying a house in New Hampshire, and it's not the same title company because the title company that you're using in Maine doesn't have offices or doesn't have locations in New Hampshire. So you got to use a different title company, right? Or maybe the person that's selling their house that you're buying wants you to use a different title company and wants you to use theirs because they're in the same hands. It is very, very important that your realtor and the realtor that you're working with on both sides understands this. And it's mostly more important that the title companies understand this, because you want those two title companies talking to each other. Hey, Bobby Sue here, calling from ABC Title. I have a closing that's going to be happening at 9 a.m. Thursday morning. Once we close, I will be sending you a wire transfer, pitching, what am I trying to say? Bird carrier, whatever it is. I'm going to be sending you money to make sure your client can close on their house, right? And it's going to be mostly a wire transfer, same day wire transfer. Maybe it's a bank check and it's going to be couriered over and it's going to happen in the same day. Whatever it is, it needs to be figured out up front, however that happens. So if you're closing in a different state and you need this house to close first, that transaction is happening in real time, or at least in the same day. So everybody can close at the same time and everybody can sell at the same time in order to have all the dominoes fall into effect. Guys, I got going kind of fast here, so I got a little twisted buying and selling. I apologize for that. I'm going to leave you with this. It's not for the faint at heart, but it can be if you work with a broker, a realtor, somebody that you know, like, and trust, or somebody that has the experience. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't, who has done this before, and have them explain their process. This is the process I use, and it's much more detailed than that. It's all documented. There's a ton of documentation I'm kind of skipping through just to keep this video short. but make sure they've done this before and have questions that you can ask them if you don't know them, so they know, so you feel pretty confident that they can do this. And you're going to know pretty quick how responsive they are and what type of communicator they are. And do they dot their I's and cross their T's twice, or do they wing it and just wait, right? You got to be on top of this stuff, because the last thing you want is to be in that transition period where you don't know where you're going to live. You got to move your family out of a house. You don't know where you're going to live, and you're going to try to buy this house, and you just don't know what you're going to do. You don't want that. Very, very nerve-wracking. I don't know if this information was helpful or not, guys. I thought I'd just throw it out there, because at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is educate you on processes of how to transact in real estate. And in this example, we call it the same day close, or a dual closing, right? You're going to sell your house and buy another house in the same day, and the steps that you got to go through to do that. There's a lot more steps that are involved in the process. I don't have time to get into it all right now, because again, the video would be a lot longer. I just wanted to hit on the key steps when selling your house. Make sure you guys get it to a price that you understand what the net proceeds are, and is that enough? Make sure that there's a property disclosure, so you disclose all the material issues that you know of. And I would encourage you to make sure you have a home inspection done on your house, so when a buyer puts an offer in, it has a due diligence period, and you're not surprised by stuff that comes up that you didn't know about, causing your buyer to pull away from the deal. You want to be able to disclose that up front, so any offer you're going to get, the buyer already knows this, giving them less reason to leave the deal, right? Those are the three things. You're also going to want to understand earnest money and how much earnest money, how much skin in the game does the individual who's offering to buy a house has. The more earnest money, the more skin in the game, the less chances are they're going to walk away. And then finally, time frame, right? Are they flexible? Can they move in later? Can they move in sooner? Can they rent back to you if you can't close on this house yet, but you need a place to live? Are they willing to do that, right? Those are some key criteria that you're going to want to understand, right, before anything is accepted. Finally, you're going to also want to know what type of loan are they using if they're financing your house. If it's based upon government loans, governments are very big on safety and water quality, especially if you have a well, right? So they're going to look for those things, and they're going to answer to those things. If some of your challenges come back that are in those criteria, that falls in that criteria, you may have a hard time closing that loan without fixing them first. So you're going to want to know what type of loan that buyer, that's going to buy your property is offering. You're just going to want to know that, because the deal could blow up, no fault of any party, because the lender won't lend based upon the challenges that you found in your house. And if you knew that up front, maybe you could address it. Flip to buying a house. You get through that process, it's all going good. You're going to have to make an offer based upon your house subject to sale, and that's going to come with an addenda. And that addenda is going to say, how long is it going to take you to sell your house? And that broker is going to want to know, because the seller is going to say, I don't want to take my house off the market longer than I need to if this falls through. So you're going to have this window over here that you're selling pretty tight in order to make that addenda work, right? Last thing you want is the deal to fall through, because then you're back to, oh, I'm scrambling. Do I have to have a place to go? That is transit, right? In transition, right? You don't want that. So you got to make an offer that's subject to sell. Can you make a compelling offer enough to get them to accept your offer? And how much skin are you going to put in the game over here, right? Remember, the skin in the game happens before when you make an offer, right? You have to have earnest money in about 5 days after you make an offer. They don't get paid. Nobody gets paid. It just sits in escrow, but that has to be involved. At least in Maine, you have to have earnest money in. You can put whatever time frame you want. Normally it's 5 days, 3 to 5 days, in order for that seller to know you have skin in the game. Same thing with you as a seller, wanting to make sure they have skin in the game, right? So just consider you're doing the same thing. You're kind of schizophrenic. You're kind of being a seller and you're kind of being a buyer at the same time. And it can be challenging if you don't know what you're doing or you haven't done it before, right? That's why you need guidance. That's why you need a good realtor or somebody you know, like, and trust in the real estate industry that has done this before and understands this stuff. Put an offer in, subject to sale. You're going to have to go through your own contingency periods. Maybe they're the same boat. Maybe they've done an inspection themselves, and here's the report. Maybe they haven't, and now you got to hire an inspection company that you got to go through their house. Make sure you're not buying a lemon, if you will, right? And what happens if stuff comes up out of the air? Are you going to sweep it under the rug because you're selling this house and these guys aren't willing to budge? Or are you going to try to negotiate? Because the last thing you want to do is be forced to buy something that you shouldn't be buying based upon the conditions of this house just because you've sold this house and you got to go, right? It's a dance, guys. It is a dance, and it can be a beautiful dance or it can be chaotic, right? It all depends on communication, transparency, managing expectations, and making sure you have people around you. And I'm going to specifically talk about realtors now that you know, like, and trust, or at least have the experience, and you can lean on them to help you through this process. A good realtor, somebody who's been doing this, is going to know this. It's not going to be as nerve-wracking for them because they've done this numerous times and they understand the steps. And they'll already know what they're doing before you know, because when they communicate, they should be able to they should be able to tell, we came back with these issues. I'm already on it. I'm talking to their broker. Here's some questions that I've asked them. What's the seller willing to do? The seller says, I'm going to talk to a client. The client says, yeah, I will fix this, and this. All right, great. I'm in the process of creating an investigation contingency amendment. Client, I'm going to have you sign it, which says they need this, and this fixed by this day. They've already agreed verbally. Just sign it. Here's the information. I'm going to put it to you. It's going to be attached to the purchase and sale. They're going to say they're going to sign. They're going to fix. Last thing I'm going to say, you don't want them to sign it and say they're going to fix it before the house closes, because it's too open-ended, right? It could be the second before it closes. What if it didn't? What if they don't fix it and you're going to closing, right? You're going to want them built in a couple days. Let's say you're going to close on the 18th. Well, you want those issues resolved. Let's say you want those issues resolved 2 weeks prior. So you want those issues resolved on the 4th, right? You want to know by the 4th that those issues resolved, and you can make sure those issues are well by the invoices, what they've paid, the work that was done, whatever, or have it re-looked at by your building inspection guy that came out there and did it. Sometimes they'll do that. Sometimes they'll charge a fee too. I'm just saying that out loud, but make sure that's done. You don't want to wait till the last second. You don't want to wait till when you're doing a walkthrough to find out this didn't happen, and now what am I doing, right? I'm even scrambling more because your house is going to close at the same day. So understanding that dance isn't easy. It is happening more and more, guys, as people just don't have a ton of discretionary money. Again, if you can sell your house, you got a place to go before you buy or build a new house. Ideal for you. You got it all worked out, and maybe that may be something you want to think about too. Before you look to buy and get out to sell, maybe I look at a transition plan so I'm not such in a rush to buy something new. Or again, if you owe nothing on your house and you have enough debt to income to balance paying 2 notes at the same time, really 3 if you take out a home equity line of credit, you can take out some money in your house. Let's say you got a house and it's worth $400,000 and you take out $100,000, right? But you don't owe anything, so you're just paying on that note of $100,000 that you're going to use to put on this new house. But let's say you have a house that's worth $400,000, you owe $250,000, and you're going to take out $100,000 making it, you're going to $350,000. You got 2 notes. You get the original mortgage, you get the home equity line of credit that you're going to be using to buy this house, right? So you got to make sure your debt to income works, and your lender and a realtor will be able to help you with that, because realtors deal with the lenders all the time, right? These are just questions that you're going to want to know. I know I keep on going. I feel like I'm doing that because it is so, so important that you understand this process. So when you're in this process, you know what's going on so you don't freak out. Because I've had many clients that I've had to walk off the ledge, not because I didn't over communicate with them, not because I didn't have these expectations managed, not because I didn't dot my I's and cross my T's twice. It's because I get it. It can be nerve-wracking, especially when you're talking about housing, especially in this day and age where you realize about all the homeless and you're seeing the price of things and the inflation. It can be nerve-wracking. It's not something else you need to worry about or be nerve-wracked against or on, assuming you know what is going on and you have a good realtor who can walk you through the steps, maybe help you walk away from the cliff and get you through that process. Sometimes we laugh. Me and my peers laugh. Sometimes we're psychiatrists or psychologists, depends on what the situation is. But sometimes we do that because, I get it. We deal with this every day, and you're just dealing with this maybe once or twice in your lifetime. It's not your forte, right? Maybe if I had to do what you did, maybe I'd feel the same way, right? I don't know. All I'm trying to say is, Work with an expert, work with somebody who has experience, work with somebody who's known and have done this before. Work with somebody that you know, like, and trust first, assuming they've done this before. But if they haven't, you may not want to work with that person. You might want to find somebody that's more experienced. Or you could ask somebody that's more experienced, hey, would you really willing to work with my friend who I know, like, and trust, and help them, teach them? And maybe you have to pay a little bit more. Maybe that broker would be willing to share some of that income with your friend that you know, like, and trust. That's a broker that may be new in this business. All right, guys, I'm going to close. I hope all is well. Again, today is election day. By the time you see this video, you hopefully you would have already voted. And hopefully, which I don't think is going to be the case, we're going to already know the results. I'm not going to predict who's going to win. Obviously, I think I know who's going to win, but, it doesn't matter. It matters that I don't think we're going to know truly. This is what I think. I think not that anybody's asking what I think, so you can stop this now if you don't want to know. But I think by tomorrow morning, maybe tomorrow afternoon, which is going to be the 6th, we're going to have a pretty good idea who won the presidential election. But then you're going to have litigation involved. If it's close, like everybody is saying it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be close. But if it's close, you're going to have the lawyers involved, and there's going to be litigation. So we're going to have an idea of who the president to be is gonna be, but you never know with litigation what can happen. So that all has to go through that process. But I think by tomorrow afternoon we'll have a pretty good idea who won the presidential election minus the litigation. If it's not close, I don't think you're gonna have to worry that much about litigation. I mean, everything that you're hearing in the public says it's gonna be close. I'm not convinced. I have other avenues that I listen to stuff. I don't think it's gonna be close, but again, I've been wrong many times before, and I may be wrong this time. And if it is, if I am, I am. Remember, regardless, guys, of who wins this election, we are all Americans, and we can get through anything if we work together. The media, this presidential election, all these other things, it's so divisive. It's pulling us apart. We got to stop doing that. Our common enemy isn't our neighbor. We may have difference of opinions. We may disagree on things. That doesn't make them your enemy. That's what makes America great. But at the end of the day, there's got to be a winner. There's got to be a loser. And let's work together to make sure America, she can be as strong and as powerful as possible, because I believe a strong and safe America only makes the world stronger and safer. All right, guys, I'm done. Hope all is well. Stay safe. Don't have a meltdown, regardless if your side loses or wins. Everything's going to be fine. And if you want to know more information about this topic specifically, just shoot me a line, shoot me a text, comment. And if you like this content, if you look at my other videos, or if you have other content you'd like to know about, first of all, I appreciate it if you subscribe and like this channel and tap that bell to be notified when I drop new content. But second of all, if you are, just let me know. Sometimes I create videos just upon responses of people that are asking, hey, can you tell me about this? Sometimes I do that as well. I'm always open to new content and new information, because it isn't about me. It's about you. It's about what you're looking for. It's about educating you as a consumer, what it would take to transact in this crazy world we have real estate. And the more educated you are, the smoother the transition is going to be for not only you, but a realtor, whether it's me or somebody else, the smoother the transition is going to be. All right, guys, take care. Scott Tebow, over and out. Bye-bye.